I came home early that day. It wasn't planned. I just needed to breathe. Work was suffocating, and I thought maybe, just maybe, coming home to Elliot would feel like air. But the house felt too still, too quiet for 6 in the evening. No music, no television. Just the murmur of voices from the living room. I stepped in and froze in the doorway. Elliot and Rhea sat too close on the couch, a bottle of wine between them. His laughter cut off mid-sentence when he saw me. That kind of silence, abrupt and awkward, says more than words ever could. "Hey," he said, as if surprised, as if I didn't live there too. Rhea turned, her expression unreadable. "I was just passing by," she offered, brushing her hair behind her ear. My eyes caught something in Elliot's face. He looked at her too long. Not like a brother-in-law. Not even like a friend. That look had weight, fondness laced with guilt. I felt it like a punch to the gut. I swallowed hard. "Didn't know we were hosting," I said, forcing a smile. Elliot chuckled. "You're being paranoid again." That word. Again. I laughed too. But it was the kind that doesn't reach your eyes. Later that night, while folding laundry, I noticed something in the bathroom trash. It caught my eye because we hadn't used that brand in years. It was a pregnancy test. Used. I picked it up like it was radioactive. There was no mistake. 2 pink lines, clear as day. I stared at it, pulse pounding in my ears. It wasn't mine. I hadn't peed on one of these sticks in years. We gave up. Or at least, I did, after the 4th miscarriage nearly broke me. Could it be Rhea's? But in my bathroom? Who does that? I stood there in silence, gripping a piece of someone else's future in my hand. The memory of Elliot brushing past the fertility aisle last week popped into my mind. How quick he was to steer the cart away. "Why torture yourself?" he said. Now I was wondering, who was he protecting from the torture? I didn't ask him. Not yet. I needed something concrete. Something undeniable. For years, I was told I was too sensitive. Too reactive. Not this time. He fell asleep on the couch, the way he always does after too much wine. I watched him for a while. That used to be a comforting sight. Now it felt like a mask slipping. Then his smartwatch lit up. A text. Can't wait to tell her. Finally. 2 hearts. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. The preview said enough. I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. Tell who? Tell her what? And that damn heart emoji. It stared back at me like a slap. Elliot always said he had no secrets. That we told each other everything. Liar. I went to bed without waking him. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, my mind running in endless circles. I could hear the refrigerator hum, the clock tick, Elliot's steady breathing, everything except the truth. I whispered into the dark, what if I'm not wrong this time? That thought scared me more than anything. Because if I wasn't wrong, everything I feared was real. I remembered what Elaine told me once after Elliot dismissed another one of my suspicions. You're too emotional, Maris. That's your problem. Maybe. But this time, emotion wasn't what I felt. I felt resolve. My fingers curled around my phone under the pillow, the screenshot still there, glowing like a loaded gun. I didn't cry. Not yet. I had cried too many times before for less. This time, I wouldn't let them gaslight me into silence. And to those watching, have you ever had a moment like that? When you knew, deep down, something was wrong but you needed just one more sign to believe yourself? Comment "I knew before the storm" if you've ever trusted your gut before the truth broke through. The moment I stepped into my parents' house that Friday evening, I knew I had made a mistake. The scent of rosemary chicken, candles flickering on the long oak dining table, the clinking of silverware, on the surface, it was the same as every other family dinner. But the air was thick, like everyone had rehearsed what not to say. Rhea greeted me with an embrace that felt just a little too long. Her perfume clung to my sweater. "You look tired," she said brightly, brushing imaginary lint from my sleeve. "I came straight from work," I replied, watching as she turned and gave Elliot a wink. He laughed, too loud, and focused all his attention on my father, as if I weren't even there. He didn't meet my eyes once. Not during grace, not when we passed the bread. Just sat beside Rhea, smiling, refilling her glass before she asked. My mother, Elaine, floated between us like a stage director in a play only she understood, smoothing napkins, adjusting chairs, refusing to acknowledge the tension sitting beside the green beans. "Isn't it nice," she said, beaming, "all of us together like this?" Nice. If pretending everything was fine qualified as nice. The conversation stumbled along. Thomas, my father, made a few dry comments about the economy. No one asked me about work. I watched their faces more than I listened. Small glances. Shifting eyes. I wasn't paranoid. I was the only one not acting. When the wine was halfway down the second bottle, Rhea got looser, louder. Her laughter pierced the room like glass. She leaned into Elliot's shoulder as she told some story about a coworker getting fired for dating his boss. "If only I could keep a man like Maris does," she said with a giggle. Then, she looked at Elliot. Just for a second. A beat too long. The silence at the table felt like someone sucked all the air out. Then Elaine, bless her, piped up, "Who wants more potatoes?" She passed the bowl like nothing happened. Elliot didn't laugh. Didn't smile. Just got up and poured himself another glass. His back turned. His jaw clenched. Thomas didn't even pretend to care. He stared at his plate as though if he ignored us hard enough, we might disappear. I sat perfectly still. A quiet, simmering note in a room full of noise. Every move felt like a performance they forgot I didn't audition for. After dinner, I cornered Elaine in the kitchen, wiping down an already spotless counter. "What's going on with Elliot and Rhea?" I asked quietly. She paused, then smiled, a polite, rehearsed smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You always overthink things, sweetheart." There it was. The script. Maybe if you weren't so cold all the time, Elliot wouldn't drift. I felt it like a slap. But I didn't flinch. Just stared at her. "You think I'm the reason he's..." I stopped myself. There was no point. She patted my arm. "Relationships are hard, Maris. You've always had a tendency to exaggerate." She went back to stacking plates, as if her words hadn't just torn something open inside me. I walked away without another word. But inside, I was fire. No one was going to gaslight me out of what I knew anymore. Then came the moment. We were getting our coats when Rhea reached to grab hers from the chair. Her sleeve shifted. That ring. My ring. A small, gold band with a twist of rose quartz, a one-of-a-kind piece Elliot had given me on our 3rd anniversary. I'd lost it months ago. Searched everywhere. I thought I was going crazy for misplacing it. Rhea caught me staring. Her eyes widened for a half-second before she laughed. Oh, this? Just some vintage thing. Found it in a drawer at a thrift shop. Elliot coughed. It's not what it looks like, he said, eyes darting to the floor. No one asked him. I looked between them. My voice was calm, deliberate. I want my key back. Elaine blinked. What? You're not staying for dessert? She asked, like I was being rude for walking away from a crime scene. I've had enough, I said, placing my fork down with a clink that echoed louder than any goodbye. And to those listening, have you ever caught someone in a lie so bold it left you speechless? Drop I saw it too if you've ever trusted your eyes over their excuses. I didn't sleep that night. My body was still, but my mind paced. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ria's hand flash with that ring, my ring, and Elliot's face turning away like a guilty man rehearsing denial. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge and the ticking clock that seemed to mock my restlessness. I poured myself a glass of water, but it did nothing to wash the bitterness down. The phone rang at 11:57 p.m. Ria's name lit up the screen. My first instinct was to let it ring. But something inside me, a mix of dread and morbid curiosity, made me answer. Maris? Her voice cracked. I need to talk to you. Now? Please. I don't know who else to call. I wanted to tell her not to come. To say I was done with her, with all of them. But the words didn't come. Old habits die hard, especially when you're trained to clean up the family mess. When she arrived, her mascara was smudged, and her breath smelled faintly of wine. She stood in the doorway like a child caught stealing cookies, except whatever she stole was far darker. What is it? I asked. She hesitated. Her lip trembled. I didn't mean for it to happen. My arms folded across my chest. For what to happen? Ria looked at the floor. I'm pregnant. The air left my lungs. My grip on the counter loosened, and I had to steady myself. I stared at her face, looking for the punchline, but there was none. She took another breath, words spilling like confession in a church she didn't believe in. I love him, Maris. I didn't plan it, but I love him. Who? I whispered, though I already knew. Her silence was the answer. Then she said it. Elliot. For a second, the world shrank to sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint patter of rain against the window, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I laughed. Not out of humor, but disbelief. A sharp, broken sound. You? I said softly. You and my husband? Ria nodded, sobbing now. I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. Didn't want to? I said. You slept with him in my house. She covered her face with her hands. Please don't hate me. I just wanted to be loved. Something inside me snapped, but not loud. It was quiet, like glass breaking under snow. You didn't want love, I said. You wanted mine. I turned away, because I couldn't look at her. Memories came in flashes, Christmas mornings where Elaine handed Ria the better gift, birthdays where my cake was smaller, the way Mom's voice always softened when she said Ria's name. And then one memory cut through like a knife. Elaine standing by the window years ago, telling me, you should learn from your sister. She knows how to keep people around. That lesson, it seemed, Ria had learned too well. When I turned back, she was still crying, shaking like a sinner begging for absolution. But I had none to give. Get out, I said quietly. She hesitated, as if hoping I'd change my mind. When I didn't, she grabbed her purse and fled into the night, leaving the door half open. I stood there for a long time, staring into the dark. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger, someone emptied of everything she used to be. An hour later, Elliot stumbled through the same door, smelling of bourbon and guilt. He kicked off his shoes clumsily, muttering something about a late meeting. I watched him like I was watching a movie I'd already seen. No surprises left. "You look pale," he said, rubbing his temples. "Are you okay?" I smiled faintly. "Perfect." He didn't notice the tremor beneath the word. He never did. When he disappeared into the bedroom, I stayed in the kitchen, fingers tracing the cold edge of the countertop. Calm had replaced rage. The kind of calm that frightens even the person feeling it. To those listening, betrayal doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. Sometimes, it wears the face of someone you used to tuck into bed, or the smile of the man you once trusted with your soul. And when you finally hear it, it's already too late. The sun hadn't even thought of rising when my eyes opened. I wasn't sure if I'd slept at all. The house was still, but inside my head, everything moved with surgical precision. I sat on the edge of the bed, the same one where Elliot once promised me forever, and made a list in my notebook. Every word Rhea said the night before. Every lie wrapped in apology. Every time Elliot's business trip overlapped with her doctor's appointments. I walked through the quiet house, collecting proof without emotion, receipts for hotel stays in Seattle, a note written in Rhea's handwriting tucked inside his jacket, an extra toothbrush that wasn't mine. Each discovery felt less like heartbreak and more like documentation. I wasn't screaming anymore. Screaming was for people who still hoped to be heard. I couldn't scream, I whispered to the empty kitchen. So I started planning. There comes a moment when pain turns into purpose. That moment had arrived. By mid-morning, I was driving across town to see Lena Moritz. She was an old friend from college, now a family attorney who specialized in cleaning up the kind of messes people swore would never happen to them. Her office smelled like strong coffee and certainty. She looked up from a stack of papers as I walked in. "Maris," she said, her tone soft but sharp around the edges. "I was wondering when I'd see you." I didn't have to explain much. She already understood. "I think my husband's having an affair," I began. Then, quieter, "with my sister." Lena didn't flinch. She leaned forward. "Do you have proof?" I nodded. "Not enough to take him down. Yet." "Then that's what will change," she said. "Don't confront him again. Collect. Stay silent. Build your war chest." Her voice was steady, deliberate. It was the first time I'd ever felt like silence could be armor instead of surrender. We went through the logistics, phone records, email accounts, cloud backups. She asked about finances, prenup clauses, and whether I'd consider custody terms if Ava, our niece, became part of the crossfire. "If Elliot plays chess," Lena said, sliding a form across the desk, "you'll learn to play better." I left her office with a plan and a folder labeled confidential. The city felt clearer on the drive home, the same way a battlefield does once you've accepted the fight. By afternoon, I was knee-deep in what Lena called digital ghosts. I logged into our home security system, a cloud backup I'd set up years ago and forgotten. The footage wasn't complete, but it was enough. Rhea's car in the driveway on a Thursday I'd been in Salem for work. Her walking through the front door alone. Elliot arriving 10 minutes later. My pulse didn't spike. Not anymore. I just hit download. Then I found his old tablet in the drawer, left unlocked, carelessly, like he still believed I wouldn't dare look. There were fragments of messages. Half deleted, but not enough. Can't stop thinking about you. I'll fix everything soon. She suspects something. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Lena. Her reply came within minutes. We're building a fortress. Next, the finances. Our shared account had a recent withdrawal labeled gift. A large one. I thought of Ava's new bracelet, silver, small, and clearly too expensive for a child. Rhea gave me this, she told me, smiling proudly. Daddy bought it. I sat back, staring at the numbers on the screen. They weren't just careless, I murmured. They were confident I'd never fight back. Time to break that illusion. The next morning, Lena and I met again. She had already drafted the papers. The words adultery, betrayal, mental cruelty stood in perfect, cold font. I read every line, not as a wife, but as a witness to her own life finally being written down correctly. We filed it under confidentiality, no official notice, no confrontation. I wanted control over how this story unfolded. When I signed my name, my hand didn't shake. I wasn't thinking about Elliot anymore. I was thinking about the version of me who had begged, believed, and been dismissed. That woman was gone. Back home, I slid the legal copies into my father's old toolbox in the garage, the only place Elliot never touched. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and waited. When he came home that night, his tie loose and his cologne too strong, he kissed my forehead absent-mindedly. "You're quiet tonight," he said. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "I'm just saving my breath," I told him, "for something important." He laughed softly, thinking it was a joke. But I didn't. To those listening, sometimes the loudest act of courage is done in silence. When you stop begging to be believed and start preparing to be free. If you've ever been there, type "I stopped explaining" in the comments. You'll know why. I walked into Lena's office that morning carrying 2 folders so thick they felt like the weight of my own history. Inside them, screenshots, receipts, timestamps, and that damned ring Rhea had worn like a trophy. My hands didn't tremble when I set them on her desk. They belonged to someone else now, someone past fear. Lena looked up from her laptop and smiled with that calm certainty that could make a person believe in structure again. "We're going to win this," she said. Winning used to feel hollow to me. Now it felt necessary. I spread the evidence across the table. She flipped through it carefully, pausing at the messages, the photos, the footage from the driveway camera. "He underestimated you," she said simply. "Most men like Elliot do. They build their lives assuming their wives won't read the fine print." She began explaining how Oregon law handled adultery and asset division, how intent mattered, how timing mattered, how everything left a paper trail. "This isn't petty revenge, Maris," she said. "It's reclaiming what's yours." I nodded. "How do I keep Ava out of this?" Lena leaned back, tapping her pen. "Temporary orders, sealed records, and zero discussion with Elliot. You control the narrative." I caught my reflection in her office window. My eyes looked sharper than I remembered. "I'm not asking for permission anymore," I told her. "I'm making demands." She grinned. "Good. That's the language the court understands." And to those listening, have you ever been stuck until someone finally told you how the rules really worked? If you have, you know that's the moment power starts to shift. By noon, I was back home in my office. The fax machine hummed as Lena sent the sealed motion to Elliot's attorney, grounds, adultery and mental cruelty. No confrontation. No grand speech. Just a single, steady act that couldn't be undone. A few minutes later, my phone beeped. Motion received. Lena texted, "That ping means your voice just grew louder." 2 hours later, another ping, Elliot's legal team. They wanted to discuss an equitable division and threatened to freeze assets. It was their way of saying, "We know you're serious." Then Elaine called. Her voice was honey, but her words cut like wire. "Maris, maybe you don't realize what you're throwing away. Families survive worse things than this." I breathed slowly. I realize exactly what I'm saving, for me. There was silence on the line, then the soft sound of her sigh, the one she used when I was 10 and had disappointed her again. I didn't care. Courage doesn't always yell. Sometimes it just signs documents. By mid-afternoon, I was surrounded by spreadsheets, printouts, and redline notes. The joint accounts were already restricted. Elliot had moved fast, freezing what he thought was my dependence. I smiled. The last thing he'd expected was that I'd already moved my inheritance into a private account 2 weeks ago. For years I'd stayed silent for the sake of peace. Now peace was irrelevant. Control was the new currency. Lena called again, walking me through something she called anti-slap defense and high net worth protection strategy. Her tone was clinical, but I could hear pride under it. "Every step you take now," she said, "is a declaration, you're not the victim anymore." After the call, I drafted an email to my colleagues. Taking personal time. Limited contact for a few days. It was a lie, of course, but lies can serve truth when they buy you space. I glanced at Ava's school photo pinned to the corkboard, her gap-toothed grin beaming up at me. That smile meant more now than a decade of dinner-table civility. "They told me to be quiet," I murmured, "so I'm just speaking the laws they pretended didn't exist." Evening fell like the closing of a curtain. Elliot came home, briefcase in one hand, guilt still invisible to him. I stayed at my desk, calm, composed, unreadable. "You've changed," he said finally, his voice low. "Yes," I replied, eyes still on my computer screen. "I changed from someone who asked for peace to someone who demands truth." He blinked, confused, like the words didn't fit the version of me he thought he owned. Then came a soft voice behind him. "Elaine." She had let herself in again. "Make it easy for yourself, Maris. We've always loved you." Her emphasis on you was pointed, a reminder of her own imagined moral high ground. I closed my laptop slowly, stood, and looked at both of them. Love isn't silence when it's built on lies. No one moved. No one spoke. Elliot looked away first. Elaine followed him out. Their footsteps faded down the hallway. And then, ping. The sound came from my inbox. A new email, no sender name, just the subject line, "We know everything." I stared at the glowing words, pulse steady but rising beneath the calm. Justice, it seemed, had only just begun to speak. The house was darker than usual when I came home that night. Ava had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching her stuffed bear, the TV still flickering with some old rerun she'd been too tired to finish. I turned it off, pulled the blanket over her, and stood there for a while, just listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the emptiness that used to feel like peace. Elliot's side of the bed upstairs was untouched, his pillow perfectly in place, proof that he hadn't been home at all. Maybe he'd gone back to her. Maybe he'd gone anywhere but here. My chest ached, but not the kind of pain that made you cry. This was quieter, sharper. Like standing barefoot on glass. I thought about dinner nights with my family, the way Elaine's voice always dipped when she said my name, the look Thomas gave me when things got tense, like I was the one holding the knife to my own back. "I used to be invisible," I whispered to the dark. "Now I'm unseen on purpose." The phone buzzed on the counter, a family group chat lighting up with emojis, smiley faces, hearts, and one message that sliced through all the fake warmth. When will you stop causing trouble, Maris? My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't respond. I didn't owe anyone the illusion of politeness. This wasn't my home anymore. This was my courtroom. And to anyone listening right now, have you ever realized that the people who claimed to love you were the ones making you feel most alone? That realization hits colder than betrayal itself. My phone rang again. This time, Lena. Her name glowed like a lifeline. I've been reviewing your case, she said, her voice steady, her tone surgical. They're circling, Maris. Don't let them close in. You have to hold the line. Just hearing her voice steadied me. There was something healing about being believed without apology. They're spreading stories, I said. Elaine's posting family photos, writing about how much she misses unity. Elliot's playing the victim. And Ria's silent. Silence, Lena said, is her strategy. Gaslighting is quiet violence. And you're living in its echo chamber. She was right. Every word out of that family was a rewrite of my reality. They wanted to bury me under the weight of politeness. But I was done being buried. I'm not waiting for anyone to save me, I told her. I'm building my own escape route. That's the spirit, Lena replied. Keep documenting. Keep calm. Wolves lose interest when the prey stops running. When we hung up, I recorded a note in my phone. They told me I was crazy, I said quietly, my reflection staring back from the black screen. So I chose to prove them wrong, by building a case, not a breakdown. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. A group video call, my family. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elaine's face filled the screen first, perfect makeup, perfect lighting. Maris, she began sweetly, we're worried about you. You've changed. All this drama, it's not healthy. Think of Ava. Thomas sat beside her, silent as ever, his nods mechanical. Ria was there too, barely visible, lips tight, eyes red. She wouldn't meet my gaze. Worried about me? I asked, voice steady. Or worried about how this looks to your friends? Elaine's smile flickered. You've always been so sensitive. No, I corrected. I've just stopped pretending. They didn't like that. The call went quiet for a beat, just heavy breathing and pitying looks. Then Thomas sighed, the sound of false disappointment. Ria whispered, Maris, please don't do this. I stared at the screen. I didn't do anything. I just stopped lying. The call ended suddenly. My screen went black, reflecting my face back at me. This isn't a family, I murmured. It's a tribunal. For a moment, I sat in the silence, the kind that hums in your bones. Then I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and watched the liquid settle. I didn't drink it. Every sip would taste like regret. I opened my laptop and began drafting a statement, short, calm, precise. No anger, no hysteria. Just truth stripped to its bones. Something I could release if their gossip got louder. Ava stirred upstairs, and I paused to listen. That soft, even breathing reminded me what all of this was really about, building a life not ruled by shame. I remembered something I once read, never argue when you are not strong enough to stand alone. Tonight, I was standing. They taught me to be small, I whispered, fingers gliding across the keyboard. I'm done apologizing for my size. Just then, my phone dinged. A new email. My heart tightened when I saw the sender, Elliot's attorney. Subject, urgent, mediation meeting scheduled, 9 a.m. tomorrow. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it settle. The wolves were closing in, but this time, I wasn't running. I was waiting for them to make the first mistake. The quiet had become its own kind of company. After everything, the silence didn't frighten me, it clarified. I sat at my desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard, but I wasn't working. I was waiting. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Maris, a familiar voice asked, hesitant. It's Noah. From 2 doors down. I blinked. Noah Price wasn't the neighbor who dropped by with muffins or asked how your week was. He mowed his lawn early on Saturdays, waved once a month, and kept to himself. I've got something you should see, he said, voice low. No rush if you're not ready. But I think you will be. For a second, suspicion crept up my spine. I'd been taught to expect betrayal, not backup. But curiosity, hope, maybe, broke through. When you've lost faith in your own tribe, I told myself, the stranger becomes your strongest ally. To those listening now, have you ever found help in the most unexpected place? The kind that didn't save you but reminded you that you were still worth saving? We met at a tiny cafe tucked behind a bookstore. Portland's spring drizzle blurred the windows, rain tapping like a nervous finger on the glass. Noah was already seated when I walked in, a manila envelope beside his coffee cup. Camera caught something, he said quietly. Driveway. Late at night. Didn't feel right. He handed me a USB stick. Rhea, he added. Came in alone around 2 a.m. Few minutes later, Elliot pulled in. They looked like they knew where they were going. I nodded, slipping the USB into my jacket pocket. My pulse quickened, but my voice stayed even. Thank you, I said. He shook his head. I've seen what it looks like when someone's boxed in. Just figured, if it were me, I'd want someone to hand me the key. They thought I was isolated, I murmured. They didn't count on my network. As I stood to leave, he said, be careful. Truth makes people nervous. Back home, I plugged the USB into my laptop. The footage loaded slow, like it knew the weight of what it held. Timestamp, 2:17 a.m. Rhea stepping out of her car, glancing around, then walking straight to my door. 2:21 a.m. Elliot. Parking in the shadows. Walking in behind her. At one point, he looked directly at the camera, just for a second. My stomach clenched. This was more than a mistake. This was comfort in deceit. I had proof. But now the question wasn't whether I'd use it, it was how. Did I release it? Did I press send and let the fallout begin? Lena's voice echoed in my mind, you'll have to decide how public you want this. I looked out the window. Ava's bedroom light glowed softly. She was too young to understand, but old enough to remember. This isn't about revenge, I whispered. It's about truth. I forwarded the footage to Lena. Subject line, proceed when instructed. To the ones listening, would you publish your truth, knowing it could wound others? Or would you hold it until it was safe? I was still thinking about that when the knock came. Elaine. I opened the door, surprised to see her standing alone, eyes rimmed with something between shame and storm. I've been thinking, she said, voice brittle. There are things I missed. Things I let go quiet. My hands tightened on the doorframe. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she added. But I can't lie for him anymore. Not even to myself. She handed me an envelope, heavy, handwritten. I didn't read it. Not then. I just watched her walk away. For once, she didn't move like the matriarch. She moved like someone learning to walk in a new world. Back inside, I sat at my desk. USB in hand. Elaine's letter beside it. I'm not alone now, I whispered. And I will not be silent. Then my phone buzzed. New notification. Elliot's attorney. Subject, custody mediation requested, urgent. Priority, AVA. I stared at the screen, then looked up into the dark. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It never had been. The email came before dawn, the subject line shouting at me through the glow of my laptop, urgent, response needed today. I knew before I opened it what it was. Elliot's attorney. The counter lawsuit. I clicked. Words like defamation, emotional distress, and financial compensation blurred in front of me. My pulse didn't spike this time. It just steadied, like a metronome before battle. They were accusing me of destroying his reputation. The irony made me laugh, quietly, bitterly. Okay, I whispered to myself. We'll respond. I remembered something one of my old professors said years ago, the best defense is a good offense. Lena's warning replayed in my head, they'll try to break you publicly before they lose privately. I opened the evidence folder I'd built over the weeks, videos, screenshots, timestamps. Every betrayal, documented. I dragged them into a secure drive labeled Truth. Let them throw the first stone, I murmured. I'll have the camera ready. To the ones listening, when someone hits you first, do you scramble or stand your ground? When the pressure comes, what do? Fight, freeze, or find your rhythm? By afternoon, my phone was quiet. Too quiet. And the internet was screaming. A post on a local gossip page read, Maris Callan, attention seeker, divorcing for drama. Then another, she's unstable, everyone knows it. Photos appeared that I never shared, me walking into Lena's office, face strained. It looked like guilt to the untrained eye. The comments were vicious. She's faking it. She always plays the victim. Poor Elliot, what a patient man. I scrolled until my thumb ached, then stopped. That was their goal, to make me drown in noise. At the PTA meeting that same afternoon, Elaine was reportedly so gracious, telling other mothers, we just want to keep the peace for Ava's sake. Peace. Their favorite word for silence. I logged into Noah's cloud feed, the one storing the footage from my driveway. Watching that timestamp, the truth in motion, became my anchor. My pulse slowed again. They can talk, I said aloud. But cameras don't lie. As evening crept in, the walls of my house felt closer than usual. Ava slept upstairs, her breathing soft through the baby monitor. I sat in my office, the glow of the screen making my reflection look foreign. Then the doorbell rang. Once. Twice. The security monitor showed no name, just a shadow standing too still. I didn't move. This was how they operated, push, provoke, wait for me to crack. I turned the monitor off. Moments later, my phone lit up. Lena. Maris, she said without preamble. They filed for temporary custody of Ava. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. They're using her. Yes, Lena said. Leverage. They think it'll make you back down. But something inside me clicked. A clean, sharp sound. They think I'll blink, I said quietly. They don't know I have backup. I typed my response to the legal team, each word deliberate. We will not be bullied. Prepare the evidence for mediation. Then I hit send. My hands didn't shake. Around midnight, I sat scrolling through my phone, watching the comment sections turn, some sympathetic now, some asking questions instead of throwing stones. The narrative was shifting, just a little. Maybe truth moves slower than lies, but it does move. For the first time in weeks, I felt air fill my lungs without weight. This might actually help someone, I thought. Someone who thinks silence equals safety. I got up, walked to Ava's room, and brushed the hair from her forehead. Mama's doing this for you, I whispered. So you'll never confuse kindness with submission. Back in the hallway, I looked at the clock. The house was still, but I wasn't. My resolve was solid, carved out of every bruise they tried to hide. This was no longer about them winning or losing. It was about me telling the truth in a language they couldn't erase. My phone buzzed once more. A new notification flashed across the screen, live interview request, national podcast. I stared at it, the light painting my face in silver and defiance. They wanted to play public? Fine. I'd meet them there. The house was still, but my heart wasn't. I sat in front of my laptop, the soft hum of electronics filling the silence. The studio lights hadn't warmed up yet, but the mic was already live. The night before, buried under a cascade of emails and notifications, one stood out, invitation to national podcast interview, Women Who Rise. Are you in? I didn't overthink it. I said yes. Quietly, but without hesitation. Only now, reading the host's pre-show notes, did the weight settle. Tonight we expose the truth behind the perfect American home. I stared at the words. They told me to sit down. To be quiet. To think of the family's name. But tonight? Tonight I was going to stand. And speak. I glanced at Ava's photo taped beside my screen, her missing tooth smile reminding me why I kept pushing forward. Have you ever been handed a megaphone when all you asked for was a whisper? Because tonight, mine was turned all the way up. The intro music faded. The host's voice rolled through the earbuds. Our next guest has a story that's as personal as it is powerful: betrayal, courage, legal battles, and motherhood. Maris Kellen, welcome. My throat tightened, but my voice came out steady. Thank you for having me. The questions came fast. Why now? Because silence didn't bring peace. It only delayed the storm. What finally made you speak? A wedding ring. A message. And a betrayal that had a name, my sister's. They played a clip from that dinner, the one where Rhea slipped off her engagement ring. The audio of Elliot's voice echoing from my phone screen. The audience gasped. I saw it in the chat sidebar scrolling live. I leaned forward, eyes on the lens. I didn't fight for revenge, I said. I fought because pretending everything was fine nearly broke me. And I'm raising a daughter who deserves a mother who tells the truth even when it shakes the walls. We spoke of Lena, the legal moves, the gaslighting, and the smear campaigns. I didn't cry. I didn't falter. I didn't need to. The show ran 43 minutes. But within minutes of the closing line, the internet caught fire. Notifications flooded my phone. Messages poured in. Maris Kellen trended within the hour. I left my abusive husband today. Because of you. Thank you for speaking what I've lived through. One comment simply said, she made me feel seen. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking now, not from fear, but from release. I remembered a quote I saved months ago: owning our story is the bravest thing we'll ever do. I wasn't brave because I had no fear. I was brave because I kept going despite it. Lena had sent over a new media packet. My next step would be televised. Have you ever stopped hiding and realized the doors weren't locked at all? What happens when you stop asking for permission to live out loud? As evening fell, I stood by the window, city lights glittering below. I thought about every lie Elliot fed the public, every sideways glance from Elaine, every whisper behind my back. And I smiled. Not because I'd won. Not yet. But because I was no longer playing defense. The phone rang. Noah? I answered. You broke the internet, he said, laughing. Looks like you just changed the rules. No, I said. I just remembered one. Rule number 1, don't let them buy your silence. The weight of the day lifted, just slightly. And then my phone buzzed again. A text. From an unknown number. We're done pretending. Let's talk settlement. I stared at the screen, heart steady, voice silent. Let them talk. I had already spoken. The call came just after sunrise, when the house was still holding its breath from the night before. Lena's voice was low but steady. She delivered last night. It's a girl. I didn't know what I felt, wasn't joy, wasn't anger. More like a hollow thud inside my chest. My instinct was to hang up. But something kept me on the line. Curiosity? Maybe. Closure? I didn't even believe in that anymore. By late morning, I found myself walking the antiseptic halls of the hospital, the air sharp with sterile cleanliness and old sorrow. I didn't know what I was expecting. Elliot wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Rhea sat propped up, pale, her eyes fluttering toward me then away. The baby slept in a plastic bassinet, pink-capped and peaceful, untouched by any of our wreckage. I approached quietly. Congratulations, I whispered. She didn't say thank you. She just handed me a sealed envelope. My fingers hesitated before opening it. Inside, DNA results. Paternity probability, less than 30%. My knees went weak. I sat without asking. It hadn't even been love. It was recklessness masquerading as desire. A storm called passion, spinning toward anyone not strapped down. I looked at her. So this. She spoke, finally, barely audible. He told me I was different. That he'd leave you. I believed him. Why tell me now? I asked, voice flat. I wasn't even mad. I was just tired. Because I can't carry this alone anymore. Of course. It wasn't about me. It was never about me. Her apology was self-preservation, not regret. I stood. Redemption and relief aren't the same thing, Rhea. She turned her face to the wall. I didn't stay. Outside, the air slapped me clean. The kind of cold that made your lungs work harder. I closed my eyes and whispered, closure doesn't come from their truth. It comes from mine. Would you still forgive someone who destroyed your peace if they were already broken? That's not a question with a clean answer. Sometimes forgiveness is just how you decide to stop bleeding. Later that night, Ava was asleep upstairs, the software of her nightlight playing against the hum of silence. I sat in her room for a while, watching her breathe, small and unaware. Generations of women had been told to keep the peace, bite their tongues, hold the family together. I wasn't doing that to her. I opened my laptop and began typing. This isn't revenge. It's survival. I uploaded a new article, the day I let the past bury itself. It wasn't raw. It was clean, measured, deliberate. The notifications started trickling in before I even stepped away. Women writing, you gave my pain a name. Others, you made it feel survivable. I replied to one, healing isn't pretty. It's proof you survived. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the house felt lighter. Not happy. Just honest. My phone lit up again. Lena. They're withdrawing the lawsuit, she said. They want quiet now. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just breathed. I turned to the window. My reflection looked older, but not weaker. I forgive you all, I whispered. But I forgive myself more. I started packing a small box, Ava's drawings, a few photos, the USB drive. I had decided we'd move closer to the coast. Where the air was saltier and the sky bigger. Where no one knew our story unless we chose to tell it. The sea doesn't erase footprints. It teaches you how to keep walking. Just as I zipped the last flap shut, my phone buzzed again. An email. Subject, collaboration request, turn your story into a book. I stared at it for a long time. I woke with no alarm. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't need one. The sun broke gently through the blinds, and the house, so often filled with tension and quiet pain, simply breathed. No echoes of argument, no shadows of fear. Just stillness. I moved through the kitchen, made coffee, and felt the weight of everything that had happened. Only this time, the weight was lifting. Not because Elliot had changed, or Rhea had come clean, but because I had chosen to stop carrying them. I glanced at the photo of Ava smiling wide, her gap-toothed grin framed in yellow paint she'd smeared on herself in kindergarten. I said to the empty room, for her, I refused to be a victim. My inbox pinged. The subject line, confirmation of withdrawal, Elliot Vance versus Maris Callan. Just like that, the case was gone. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just stood a little taller. Have you ever found freedom not in fighting, but in walking away? There's a quiet power in knowing you don't owe anyone the last word. I stood at the front door with my purse in hand. But I didn't leave. Not out of fear, this time, I wasn't escaping. I was stepping into something. I dressed in simple black, hair tied back, and arrived at the law firm for the scheduled mediation. Lena met me in the hallway, her eyes sharp and kind. Room's empty, she said. He didn't show. There was no victory lap in that moment. Just stillness again. I imagined him retreating, tail between legs, or maybe head high in denial. Either way, the story was closing. Lena walked beside me out to the lot. You did it on your terms, she said, gripping my shoulder. In my bag, Ava's latest drawing peeked out, a crooked house, one tree, 2 windows, no stick figures this time. Just space. Safe space. I'm going to build her a house with 1 window, I told Lena. She doesn't need to look for someone coming back. Home again, I opened a worn box from the hall closet. Old Polaroids. Elaine in her pearls, Thomas beside her, all forced smiles and stiff posture. Their version of love had come with disclaimers. I was done with theirs. I posted a blog entry that night, my story isn't over. It's just mine now. Within minutes, the comments flowed. You've given us more than closure, you've given us permission. Another wrote, victims wait. Survivors walk. I stared out the window as dusk fell. Victims wait for rescue, I whispered, survivors choose the exit and walk through it. By evening, I had packed what mattered. One box of Ava's artwork, my journals, and the USB drive that changed everything. I drove to the Oregon coast with no destination in mind, just the need to feel horizon. I played a voice recording I once saved. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply walk away. The sky was that deep blue that only comes before night fully takes over. I pulled off, kicked off my shoes, and walked across cold sand. Each wave hissed at my feet, drawing lines then letting them go. Ava's drawing pressed against my chest. That one safe window, glowing. My phone buzzed. A message, collaboration accepted. Let's begin turning your story into a book. I typed back, yes. But it begins with me. I tucked my phone in my coat, lifted my face to the sea air, and said quietly, here's the start of freedom. The mornings here begin with light that doesn't demand anything of me. It just arrives, soft, patient, kind. I stand barefoot on the porch, coffee warming my hands while the Pacific stretches wide and endless before me. The sea has become my clock now. It tells me when to breathe, when to let go, when to start again. There was a time when silence hurt, when it felt like punishment. Now it feels sacred, my new language. My days follow a rhythm that isn't frantic or performative. I write at sunrise, volunteer at the shelter down the road, and read Ava bedtime stories about women who built their own endings. She always asks, Mama, are these stories true? I tell her, they are now. Freedom isn't loud. It hums quietly beneath your ribs. The chime of my laptop pulls me back. An email subject line glows on the screen, contract confirmed, memoir publication approved. I smile. I don't celebrate with champagne, I just pour another cup of coffee. The celebration is in the quiet knowing that I built this piece with my own two hands. Have you ever rebuilt your life so quietly that one day you realize, no one's watching, and that's the gift? Weeks pass. The final draft of my memoir, The Cost of Silence, sits open before me. I read each page slowly, tracing the words that once felt too heavy to write. Lena calls to review the last edits. Her voice is calm, proud. You didn't just survive, she says. You translated pain into purpose. I answer, I wrote it so Ava never has to. The book launch isn't glamorous. It's held in a small community center that smells of coffee and old wood floors. Noah helps set up folding chairs, cracking jokes about how he's now my unofficial bodyguard. The audience is a mix of strangers and a few familiar faces. Elaine and Thomas aren't among them, but I don't scan the room for ghosts anymore. I read a passage aloud, silence was once my prison. Now it's my boundary. When the event ends, a woman in her 60s approaches me, eyes shining. She whispers, your story saved my life. I don't know her, but I take her hands in mine and say, you just saved mine too. Healing, I've learned, isn't private. It ripples. One evening, a letter arrives in the mail. The handwriting stops me before I even open it, Ria's. Inside, no apology. Just acknowledgement. I'm in therapy. Trying to rebuild. I hope you're okay. I read it twice. Then I fold it neatly and tuck it into a drawer. Sometimes closure looks like no response, I murmur. A few days later, I take a detour with Ava on our way home from town. We pass the street where I grew up. The old house looks smaller now, the windows dull and unfamiliar. I slow down, roll the window halfway, and whisper, you don't own me anymore. Ava hums softly in the back seat, clutching a seashell she found earlier. We keep driving until the horizon reappears, clear and full of promise. That night, the ocean is silver under the moon. I sit on the sand, laptop open, typing my next post. Freedom has my name. I write. I'm no longer the woman who was betrayed. I'm the woman who chose herself. Silence used to break me. Now it protects my peace. I hit publish, close the laptop, and watch Ava running toward the water, her laughter mixing with the wind. My phone buzzes beside me. A message glows on the screen: invitation, Women's Empowerment Conference, keynote speaker. I stare at it, smiling slowly. The irony isn't lost on me. I once begged to be heard. Now they're asking me to speak. I pick up the phone, the ocean still singing behind me, and say, yes. But this time, I'll tell it my way. The waves keep moving, and so do I. That's how freedom sounds.